Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, I got a fun and exciting video for you guys today because I am playing a pre-release preview version of Space Station Silicon Valley recompiled for PCs. Because right now all the rage is N64 decomps, recomps, and PC ports, and this one definitely has some big decomp energy. Just be aware that the footage you're seeing is still test footage. There's going to be bugs, there's going to be glitches, which will all be ironed out in the release version of this recomp. And as far as when it's going to be done, I talked to the developer, Cellenseres, and it's basically just when he is finished with it. He's working on some of the widescreen support as we speak. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But there's definitely two different mindsets when it comes to developing these projects. Some devs love doing previews on YouTube and sending out versions for people to test and talk about. Others really like finishing up all the work and then releasing that 1.0 version of a recomp or PC port. This one is definitely the former because this again is still work in progress. And even if it isn't perfect, the results we're getting here are absolutely outstanding, and I am super excited for this thing to get finished. And if you've never played Space Station Silicon Valley before, it's absolutely a vibe. Feels like a very early version of something like Grand Theft Auto in a quasi-open world. But all of the different animals you can capture and interact with are really where this game's sense of humor and charm comes from. I had this back in the day on N64, I absolutely loved it, and maybe like every 3 or 4 years I'll sit down and play it from start to finish again just to have some fun with it. And soon you're going to be able to play this on your PC in widescreen with all sorts of different frame rate options and quality of life improvements. And I will say this game's performance on N64 isn't bad, but it definitely can chug in certain areas, so getting a more performant version of Space Station Silicon Valley is going to be awesome, and the 16:9 support when it comes in even better than that. Because the reality is a lot of different games need those frame rates. Now you will see here absolutely going wild, but I kind of love the glitches, the characters just being drawn over and over again. It is a really fun vibe, and it's one of those things I personally love checking out preview versions of projects like this. You get a look behind the scenes at what's going on, you get to talk to the developer and see where they are on the project, and you just get to kind of hype people up for this. Because personally it might not be Bomberman Hero, but this is one of those recomps or PC ports that I have been waiting for because I do love this game, and I want to be able to play it on my LG C4 OLED on PC and not just via emulation. You will see in the background some of those sprites definitely still have a little bit of a jiggle to them, but otherwise for the most part when you're actually in the levels, the graphics seem to be like 99% of the way there, and if I didn't point out some of the jiggling sprites, maybe you wouldn't even notice them. And this game always reminds me of my animals as well. No, we do not own any sheep, but we own 2 herding dogs, a corgi as well as a healer, so running around in a dog that's being controlled by a silicon computer chip herding sheep, basically my dog's dreams at night. All jokes aside though, don't get herding breeds if you don't want to get chased around the house and basically herded, because since we don't have any farm animals, those dogs treat my wife and I like the cattle that need to be moved around the house. But that is the fun thing about Space Station Silicon Valley. The game is so weird, it's so absurd, but it's so charming and fun at the same time. If you've never played this one before, you're 100% missing out, and now that it is getting a recomp, a lot more people are going to be having a lot more fun with it. As I've said in previous videos, if you missed those, a lot of these recomps and PC ports not only allow us to have better versions of games that we know, love, and remember from back in the day, but it also allows for some of a modern audience to actually come in and enjoy it. Because if people didn't grow up with the N64, they might try to play a game like this and just think to themselves, it looks too old, it runs too slow, I'm not interested in playing it, and they would miss out on a very good game. But if you give them something like a recomp version of an N64 game, then suddenly they might think the graphics are just a little bit kitschy and nostalgic or retro vibe, but it is a quote-unquote modern game. That is why these developments are so incredibly important. They really do keep the game alive, not just for us, but for everyone. Let's go into the first of 2 soundtrack samples so you can hear how the audio is shaping up in the Space Station Silicon Valley recomp, because I would say the game has a really fun and pretty relaxing soundtrack that sounds great here coming out of this alpha version. So go ahead and listen, and I'll be right back.
Hey, wat de muziek ben je er al niet van?
It's kind of fun to see in the cutscenes exactly what graphical assets are missing there, because it definitely is missing some, and that is the thing about a static recomp. Yes, there are tools available to aid in their development, but I want everyone to understand this is not a drag and drop kind of thing. It's not a one click and get a recomp out kind of thing. If it was, we'd have the entire library of the N64 Recomp in basically about an afternoon. This tool aids in the development, but developers still have to go through and manually deal with a lot of things, so there's something in the overall recompilation of the code, probably on some of the graphic hardware side of things, where those cutscenes just aren't playing properly, versus when you get the actual game and you'll see here again, outside of that sprite, kind of just jiggling back and forth, everything looks correct, the textures look good, all the models look good, and again, the frame rate is just 100% improved, plus some, compared to the N64 version of the game, and I really think that is where a lot of the benefit of these recomps come from. Yes, getting better graphics is nice, yes, getting widescreen is nice, but actually getting a lock 60 or better frame rate is really where a lot of these recomps and PC ports shine. They just make games that much more playable, because there's so many N64 games out there that could absolutely benefit from the recomp status. Things like Body Harvest, things like Hybrid Heaven, those would absolutely be amazing in recomps. And when we see it on the other side of things, the games that have already come out, stuff like Perfect Dark, stuff like Banjo Kazooie and Star Fox 64, along with the rest, it is just a more fun way to play. Although again, you'll see here some of the graphical glitches absolutely hilarious, and I kind of love to see that. So big thanks to Cellenseres for being willing to let me showcase this even though it isn't done, and I am sure once this thing is actually out, 100% of these bugs will be completely fixed up, or maybe mice in this instance, because I love this little rocket mouse that you get to go around the world in, and that again is where a lot of the charm in Space Station Silicon Valley comes from. All of the different animals you're going to find and control throughout the game all have their own unique moveset and their own unique controls, and it really kind of just drives the overall experience forward. And think of all the different mods that could be made for this game as well. We could have new texture packs, people could create new levels, and they could kind of do whatever they wanted. And because in the original release of the game there is a bug with one collectible that isn't collectible that has been fixed at this point in time, that's something that could be remedied in a recomp as well. But I am curious, did you play this one back in the day, and if so, what did you think about it? It's one of those things, I never remember seeing it in previews. I just saw the box at EB Games on the rack, and I thought to myself, well, you know what, this looks kind of entertaining, and I like animals, so why not just give it a shot? And honestly, it's always been probably in like the top 20 favorite N64 games of all time. It was just that era of experimental gaming, where devs kind of just decided to try whatever they thought would work, and sometimes you got absolute disasters, and other times you got amazing games, in my opinion at least, like Space Station Silicon Valley. And that is why these recomps and PC ports are going to continue to get bigger and bigger as time goes on, because so many different devs have nostalgia for these exact games and hardware, and that's why you see them happening more and more. Let's go into the second of two soundtrack samples, because again, I love the music in this game, and I'll be right back with just a little bit more Space Station Silicon Valley. So the nice thing is, too, at least in my ear, it sounds like the audio quality here is higher than you would get on the N64. Now, I am not an audiophile. I always say I'm a very visual person, and I have two tin ears, but it's kind of what I'm hearing out of this build. But this is the type of fun game that kind of personified what the N64 was about, outside of core 3D platformers like Super Mario 64, Donkey Kong 64, and the Banjo Kazooie and Tooie games. Maybe even Conquer, even though that was definitely a 3D platformer with an entirely different vibe going on. There were games like Space Station Silicon Valley, which just kind of played around with the formula of what a quote-unquote 3D platformer could be. It is a relaxing game, it's a charming and fun game, and in some ways kind of feels a little bit like Cubivore as well. If you never played that game before, I can't stress enough, Cube of War, an amazing experience, whether you play it on GameCube or you play the unreleased N64 version of the game that was cancelled at the last minute and moved over to GameCube. And this recomp, even if it isn't finished, right now I am already super impressed. The developer is doing an amazing job, and sometime soon you're going to be able to download this one and play it, and it's going to join the pantheon of N64 games that have been recomped or ported to PC, and that is absolutely amazing. But I ask this question every single time I do one of these videos: if you could snap your fingers right now and make one N64 game appear on PC with all these enhancements, which one would it be? My answer usually is always Bomberman Hero, because it is one of my favorite games of all time and is my favorite N64 game, but having recently played around with it for some analog 3D tests, I would say Castlevania Legacy of Darkness would benefit the most from a recomp or PC port. But we're done. I'll do a review when this is out, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye!